Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I am Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, today our topic of conversation is going to be immigration. We have one of the co-authors of a brand new book from our friends at Reagan Publishing, The Politically Incorrect Guide, to Immigration, an America First Manifesto. Well, they say it's an America First Manifesto. I don't think it's the first manifesto along these lines, but we'll ask about it, and we'll take a detailed look at this immigration issue. Stay put. The Florida Roundtable begins following these messages.
Guilt. To most, it's just a word. But if you hit or worse kill a pedestrian while driving, guilt becomes your shadow, following you every day for the rest of your life. And let's be honest, you have a lot of life left to live. So please, stop before turning right on red and always yield for pedestrians. Because safety doesn't happen by accident. Alert today, alive tomorrow. A message from the Florida Department of Transportation.
There's a problem if you drink and drive a boat. It never just affects you. Boating under the influence is illegal and dangerous. Save lives by staying sober. Learn more about Florida's boating laws at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the FWC Division of Law Enforcement.
Wow, your flowers are gorgeous. What's your secret?
It's no secret. It's Bear Advanced.
You mean these blue bottles?
Uh-huh. I protect my beauties with all-in-one rose and flower care. It's insect and disease control plus fertilizer.
Really? What's this 12-month tree and shrub protect and feed?
Oh, I use it on my trees. It kills bugs for up to a year, plus it feeds. It's that easy. Hey, where are you going?
To get my own. I want a great yard, too.
Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. Always read and follow label instructions.
Years after her husband first arrived in Belle Glade, Florida from Haiti, Stephanie finally had her family together again. But her husband and daughter became disabled. So now, Stephanie supports them, working brutal 15-hour days in the farm fields. At the Glades Initiative, we connect Stephanie and others with food and social services. Help us help them have decent lives together. Visit gladesinitiative.org.
This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, always a pleasure to be with you in these quarters. And today's topic of conversation, immigration. We're going to get to the one of the co-authors of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration in just a few minutes. But, immigration is not a new issue in this country.
Right.
From before the Pilgrims, and it's been with us, But under the category of where have we been and what have we learned, I want to talk for a minute or two here about the election campaign of 1856.
Oh, going way back.
Yes, I don't think there's anybody in the audience that actually remembers that year, including me. 1856 was a three-way contest. And as you listen here, see if some of this might sound familiar. The Democrats in 1856 were viewed as the old, staid, conservative party, and they will nominate an old, staid, conservative candidate. His name is James Buchanan. He is from Pennsylvania. He's been the Secretary of State. He's been the ambassador to England. He's been a senator. He's been a congressman. Generally regarded by historians today as the worst president that the country has ever had. But that's another story, a story for a different day. The Republicans will run their first presidential candidate ever. They are viewed as young, aggressive, confident, and they nominate John C. Fremont, a retired general who is famous for exploring the western wilderness. Now, the Republicans have a problem. They were a one-idea party. and that is denouncing slavery and in the expansion of it. They know they've got to add planks like internal improvements. They want a privately owned transcontinental railroad. So you got Democrats, you got Republicans, but also in the contest, another one-idea group called the American Party. And the American Party begins in resentment against a great flood of immigrants.
Oh.
Anti-foreign, anti-Catholic. The American Party is a secret society. They have passwords. They have handshakes. When a member of the American Party is asked what the party stands for, the answer they're told to give, I know nothing. I know nothing. And they become dubbed the Know Nothing Party. Well, the American Party gets strong following from Native Americans. And I don't mean American Indians. I mean people born here, Native Americans. They say the alien influx represents a danger to American institutions. Sound familiar? These people come from the old Whig Party who don't want to become Republicans. They have success in 1854, but they break apart over the issue of slavery. But in 1856, the American Party comes together, and they get a former president of the United States, Millard Fillmore, to be their candidate. Millard Fillmore was the 13th president. Vice President is Zachary Taylor. He dies, he becomes president. Millard Fillmore for president. Andrew Jackson Donaldson for vice president, the nephew of Andrew Jackson. And they use a popular song, Wait for the Wagon, and we'll all take a ride, They build their song around a homely buckboard, and the last verse connects Andrew Jackson Donaldson to his famous uncle. As nice an example of political coattail riding as you will ever find. Many unlettered voters thought they were casting a ballot for Old Hickory, even though he'd been dead for a number of years. But the American Party made its play on being an anti-immigration party. Of course, they finished third, even with the former president as their candidate. So ask yourself, where have we been? What have we learned? Well, that's a question we'll put to our guest this day as well. So we will invite you to stay put. We're going to take a break along our network line, and let us remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And we'll continue the conversation in a moment.
Are you or a loved one turning or about to turn 65? Then now's the time to start thinking about your health care needs, specifically Medicare. If you're new to Medicare, there are a lot of options to choose from, and the whole process can be confusing. But the licensed insurance agents at Easy Medicare can help you find the right Medicare plan based on your budget and health care needs. Call Easy Medicare today and they'll guide you through the process. Whether you're completely new to it all or looking to improve on an existing Medicare Advantage or Medicare Supplement plan, Easy Medicare can help you find a plan that best suits you and your health care needs. Visit easymedicare.com/radio. EasyMedicare.com is a non-government site. It is an affiliate of eTelequote Insurance, Inc., a private licensed representative of Medicare insurance organizations with a Medicare contract. Sales agents may be compensated based on your enrollment in a health plan. Receiving quotes through our website and from our licensed insurance agents is always free, and you're under no obligation to purchase any services.
800-957-6213. 800-957-6213. That's 800-957-6213.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Precious Rose, you color our world till insects and disease turn it upside down. So we've created Bare Advanced All-in-One Rose and Flower Care. It's the no-spray formula that works 3 ways, controlling bugs and disease as it feeds for brighter, more vibrant flowers. So count your blessings and stop to smell the scientific advances. Available in easy-to-use liquid and granules. Bare Advanced. Better science, better results. BareAdvanced.com. Always read and follow label directions.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And Michael, as promised, we are joined by one of the co-authors of a brand new book from Reagan Publishing, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration. John Zmirak is with us. He is an editor, a college teacher, a screenwriter, a political columnist. He's written many, many books. He has worked for a former governor of Louisiana, a gentleman by the name of Mike Foster, who it was my pleasure to meet, I want to guess, about 18, 19 years ago. But, John, welcome to the Florida Roundtable.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you got to meet Mike Foster. He was a really good man, good governor.
Absolutely was a very nice man, and I was very proud to know him. John, before we get started, I kind of sketched in there a little bit of your biography. But if you would, I'd like you to take a minute or so and expand on that a little bit. Tell us about your educational and family background and
Sure.
How you came to write the book.
Sure. On my mother's side, my family comes from Ireland. They left during the potato famine, and they were very, very blue collar in Hell's Kitchen area of New York. Those of you who've seen Daredevil, that's where it's set. And my father's family, his grandfather, my grandfather, his father came from the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1916, and came to New York City and shoveled coal on a tugboat for the next 50 years. So I was privileged to be the first member of my family to go to college, and it was to Yale. So I got to see the sort of rags to riches experience of an American family and what immigration can do when it works the right way, and what it's like to be part of a family that wants to assimilate, play by the rules, and be part of the country and its values at a time when the system encouraged that and, in fact, demanded it. So I've sort of been part of an immigration success story, and that's why it's so painful to me to see how the system is messed up now and counterproductive and doesn't respond to America's real needs and doesn't encourage good behavior on the part of immigrants.
And, John, if I might, being the grandson of immigrants on both sides of the family, in your younger years, I'm going to guess this was a very important issue and one that you heard about frequently, and one that we might feel like years back, young people in these immigrant families grew up with differing attitudes and whatnot than much of what we see today.
Yeah. I mean, I went to Catholic school my whole life till college. And, our faith and the traditions that came with it, were a guiding force. And so, that helped us connect with other people. My parents from very, very different backgrounds, they met through a church dance, There used to be these mediating institutions that brought people together. They couldn't rely on the federal government. You didn't have a massive welfare state. You didn't get affirmative action over native-born Americans. You didn't have bilingual programs. You had to learn English. In fact, if you didn't succeed, you pretty much had to go home because there was no way the government was going to sponsor you, take care of you. 1 out of 3 immigrants from Italy went back home. 1 out of 3. That's because there was no, cushiony welfare state. And if they couldn't make it, they just went back to whatever village they were from in southern Italy and said, no, we didn't like it there. Went home. America now is like a glue trap for people from third world countries. Even if they fail here and just end up on public assistance, they're still better off probably than hardworking people back in their home village. Better off in terms of money. They're not better off being on public assistance in the U.S., raising their kids on it, but, they often get stuck. So it's like a glue trap for immigrants.
And one thing you talk about in your book, which I found really interesting, and you can expand on it, is that there are a lot of churches out there that actually support the illegal immigrants and support, sort of open borders. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, my own Catholic, the official teaching is fine. The official teaching is that immigrants have to obey the law, pay taxes, and be a grateful part of the civilization, or else they get sent home. But that's what's implied in Catholic Church teaching. But the bishops and this Pope have completely abandoned that and made up their own teaching, which sounds like Bernie Sanders' rewrite of the Democratic platform. It's basically open borders with no conditions, and if you don't go along with that, you're a terrible person. Pope Francis actually compared people who want to control their nation's borders to Herod killing the children of Bethlehem, or Cain slaying his brother Abel. It's that nutty, and part of it is just delusional utopian thinking. Immanuel Kant replacing Jesus Christ as the source of your ethics. But some of it's self-interest. The American Catholic bishops, their seminaries are in chaos. Their priests are preaching liberalism. As a result, they've lost 40%, 40% of American-born Catholics leave the church. How do you fix that? Well, you could reform. You could become more orthodox, but that's hard. That's painful. Instead, what they've chosen to do is just ride it out through importing immigrants from Latin America, basically stealing Catholics from Mexico and El Salvador to build up the numbers to cover up the fact that your own native church is collapsing. So the Catholic Church would be collapsing in America as quickly as the Episcopal Church, except that that's papered over by an influx of people from Latin America who come and go to church for a few years, and then they leave too. So the American bishops have a strong institutional selfish motive to keep the border open, and also most Catholic charities are funded now by federal government contracts, and a lot of that comes through immigration.
And I think that probably is a very good point. Well, an interesting point that I'm sure that Mike and I would take and expand on, and maybe we'll have time to come back to the Catholic Church and what's going on there. But you bring up one of the most important parts here, and that the Catholic Church now gets federal funding.
Massive funding.
Yeah. And so what I want you to do is take a look at this illegal immigration cost to the American taxpayer.
Oh, well, it costs hundreds of millions of dollars directly in terms of social services, the children having to be educated at public schools. If you've ever been in the emergency ward of a public hospital and seen all those people in kind of third world clothes waiting to be treated, they get treated free. And the kids who are born in America, we call them anchor babies. They're American citizens. They get Medicaid, and because they're an anchor baby, the parents don't have to leave, because that would be separating a family. And you can't deport the kid because he's an American citizen because of our crazy birthright citizenship laws. So that if a pregnant woman from Korea who's flying to Iceland has a layover in Chicago and gives birth, that kid is a U.S. citizen forever. There's something that's not what the 14th Amendment was meant to do. The Center for Immigration Studies did an estimate that whatever it would cost to build a wall on the southern border, there are several estimates, it would take less than 10 years to more than pay for itself by diminishing the impact of illegal immigration.
So why do the Democrats not want to build it then?
Because it's an endless flow of Democrat voters. Most of the people come in illegally, and frankly, most of the people we let in legally are low skill and low education. They come to America, and they are the perfect targets for the party of big government and the nanny state and giveaways. So they're natural Democrat voters. I suspect that if anti-communist Cubans were flooding into the country and voting Republican, you wouldn't have a strong Republican surge to keep them out either.
I'm listening to you talk about this, and of course, it wasn't always thus. And in the lifetime of many of our listeners along this network line is when the dramatic changes were put in place. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I trace much of this back to the mid and late 1960s and the presidency of Lyndon Baines Johnson. The quota system done away with. Let's open the doors. Anybody who wants to come here ought to be able to come. That was the LBJ attitude.
Well, to be more specific, it was Ted Kennedy who wrote the immigration bill of 1965, and he premised it on nepotism. The primary reason most people get into the United States today, because of that law, which I think Kennedy might have written on a bar napkin, has nothing to do with their skills or talent or education. It's because they're somebody's brother or uncle or cousin. The family reunification is the pretext for letting in millions of people into the United States. Many of them high school dropouts, many of them totally unsuited for our economy. We don't need millions of low-skilled workers to man the factories that have already closed or to homestead farms that don't exist anymore in the Midwest.
So earlier you talked about the law of birthright citizenship. Is there a way to get that changed? Or are we just reinterpreting, it?
I think it's never been tried, but we should pass a congressional statute clarifying that this was not the intent of the 14th Amendment, and courts should not interpret it that way. I think the precedent is that usually the Supreme Court defers to Congress in cases like that. If and only if they don't, then we'd have to do something constitutional, but I don't think that'll be necessary.
And I'll tell you what, John, we have reached that point in the program where we have to take a little bit of a pause along our network line here. We remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable. It is a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest is John Zmirak. He is the co-author of a brand new book from our friends at Regnery Publishing, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, an America First manifesto, available at all the fine bookstores around Florida and Amazon.com. And if you'll stay put, the conversation continues following these messages.
The concept of forgiveness is very simple. Forgiveness is letting go of your anger, bitterness, sense of justice, and desire for revenge. It's giving the issue to God and letting Him deal with it. Just let it go. Unfortunately, once emotions get involved, everything becomes more difficult. You see, our instinct is to trust ourselves rather than God. We get afraid that if we give control to God, He might not do what we want done. We want to be sure the bad guys get their due. Knowing that we would struggle with forgiveness, the Lord's Prayer makes it clear. If you want the forgiveness of God, you must be willing to forgive others. And here's the key. Sometimes I can't forgive others in my own strength. I have to confess to God and ask Him to help me forgive others through His power. He always does. We all need forgiveness. Make the choice to forgive others, just like Christ forgives you.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org and click Devotions to read the daily devotion and send to a friend.
One time he forgot to fuel up the boat. And it wouldn't be the first time he left his tackle box behind. On one trip, he even headed out without his lucky hat. And seems he almost always forgets to wear his sunscreen. But he never forgets to wear the one thing that could save his life. Life jackets save lives. Wear it, Florida.
Visit myfwc.com for more information.
Is your yard a glorious utopia? One that deserves protection from the invasion of blackberry? If so, then your passion is our passion. That's why Bayer Advanced has made Brush Killer Plus. It uses a systemic formula that kills blackberry to the root, and it's now available in a new 1.3-gallon ready-to-use pump sprayer, making it even easier to apply. Brush Killer Plus from Bayer Advanced. Your passion is our passion. Visit BayerAdvanced.com. Always read and follow label directions.
Leaving tobacco behind isn't an easy task. In all honesty, it's a very hard thing to do. The good news is, if you want to quit, Tobacco-Free Florida offers free help, support, and the tools you'll need to succeed. Area health education centers offer free classes that are run by professionals who know what you're up against. It's comforting to have a face-to-face conversation with a person who knows exactly what you're going through as you begin your quit journey. If you've tried to quit tobacco before, or if you've been avoiding trying to quit, now is the right time for you to succeed. Area health education centers offer free classes that are designed to help you quit and offer free nicotine replacement therapy like patches, lozenges, and gum. Remember, it's free, so you have nothing to lose. There's a quitter in you, and with the help of Tobacco-Free Florida's 3 ways to quit, you'll double your chances of success. If you or someone you know needs help quitting tobacco, you can call 1-877-YOU-CAN-NOW or visit us at tobaccofreeflorida.com.
We tend to focus on the material and the temporal and neglect the eternal and relational. But none of us knows the number of days that God has planned for us. Don't put off until tomorrow the really important things you can do today, like getting right with God and getting right with others. God became a man in the person of Jesus to show us how. Start by getting right with God through Jesus. Then show your family how much you love them. If you're married or a parent, surprise them by occasionally coming home early. Tell them you love them. Plan fun things to do with them. Help someone you care about, someone who needs you at the office or in the neighborhood, or maybe someone who needs a friend. Maybe just be someone to listen and hold a hand. Even seek to be right with those who are not for you. It may not be the last day that you live here on earth, but it may become a great day for you and those you care about. This is Bryant Wright, speaking right from my heart.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org. That's rightfromtheheart.org.
From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is John Zmirak. He is the co-author of a brand new book from Regnery called The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, an America First Manifesto. It's available at all the fine bookstores around Florida and places like Amazon.com. And John, we say thank you for being with us today. We know that you're very busy, and we appreciate you taking time out of the schedule to open some eyes and enlighten us on things on this immigration topic that perhaps none of us have bothered to take the time to learn. John, the point is made in your book that the percentage of foreign-born in the United States today is the highest that it has been since World War I. But there's a difference this time, and we're not doing what was called Americanization. I remember well a quote from Theodore Roosevelt, talking about people that called themselves Irish American and Italian American and German Americans, and that was nonsense, that we are Americans. And so I'd like you to take a look at that story, and how come we're not doing that? What happened?
Well, I think a loss of cultural confidence. Part of what happened after World War II. I mean, look at the British. They're doing nothing but apologize for the British Empire and for everything they did to build their civilization. Well, you can debate the merits of that one way or the other, but I can't imagine why America would be apologizing to immigrants who came here willingly, some cases breaking the law to get in. Yet we're supposed to apologize to them because our system doesn't perfectly accommodate them, and not everyone speaks Bangladeshi, and maybe not everyone understands why, some of them want to have a goat in their backyard or impose Sharia or practice honor killings. I mean, there are all these different cultures flooding into the United States, many of them not immediately compatible with American law and values. And rather than trying to adapt them to us, we've decided via multiculturalism that we have to twist ourselves into pretzels to adapt to them. That is a recipe for suicide, national suicide, as you can see in countries like Belgium and Britain and Germany, which are basically obliterating themselves via mass immigration of people who have no interest in assimilating, who just want to collect public benefits while having lots of kids and eventually imposing Sharia on the country. That's an extreme version of what we're seeing in some American cities, especially Dearborn, Michigan.
So how would you force assimilation?
Well, I wouldn't force it via the government. I would create the incentives for it. Well, one thing I would do, I would not allow textbooks like the ones they've approved for California. California has textbooks that teach in high school history that assimilation was racist, that it was equivalent to the Jim Crow segregation laws, that expecting people from Italy and Ireland, say Italy and Croatia and Germany and Mexico and Japan to learn English and take part in the American economy and support themselves and be self-reliant, to say that that is racist, to equate that with segregation, it's just completely insane. It shows you how far in cultural masochism we've come, that the largest state in the union that influences the greatest number of textbooks is imposing teaching standards like that. So, but I would get rid of affirmative action for immigrants because, hey, you came here voluntarily. If we're treating you so badly, you can always go home. We're not going to discriminate against native-born Americans to make up for some imaginary discrimination you've never even suffered since you didn't even live here till 5 minutes ago.
On the cover of your book, you have a quote from Ronald Reagan that says, "A nation that cannot control its borders is not a nation." And yet there was a time, and we've alluded to Ted Kennedy, but I want you to go back to 1986 and talk about this amnesty that affected the illegal population.
Ronald Reagan was not a fool, but he was kind of trusting, and he thought the best of people. I knew Faith Whittlesey was a good friend of mine. She was a Florida resident. She worked for Ronald Reagan in the White House, and he would tend to believe people if he had reason to trust them. For instance, they told him Anthony Kennedy was a pro-life constitutional conservative. We've seen how that worked out. They also told him that if he granted a one-time amnesty to a limited group of illegal immigrants, that as part of that, we would make sure it was never needed again because we would toughen up border security, and more importantly, we would have workplace enforcement to make sure that employers couldn't hire illegal immigrants anymore, turning the U.S. into a magnet for illegal immigration. Well, when he tried to do that, the National Chamber of Commerce and the rest of the cheap labor lobby went nuts on Capitol Hill and managed to put pressure so that the Reagan administration did not enforce the workplace verification. So American workers would continue to lose their jobs to illegal immigrants, and employers would be able to hire people off the books who don't enjoy safety or minimum wage or disability or any of the protections that we've put on the books since the robber baron era of the 1880s.
So also in your book, you reference how the Trump administration put out a new plan, wasn't that long ago, where they wanted more of a merit-based immigration system. And even Trump's advisor, Stephen Miller, got in a little bit of a debate with CNN's Jim Acosta over that and the Statue of Liberty and all that stuff. I mean, what are the benefits, do you think, of Trump's plan for like a merit-based immigration system?
Well, Congressman Good Latte in the House has a very good plan that would do all that while resolving some of the problems with people who are already here illegally. Canada has a completely merit-based immigration system, not nepotism, but merit and what the people offer the country. I don't think anybody considers Canada like The Handmaid's Tale, some sort of horrible dystopia of discrimination and violence and hierarchy and privilege. Australia has a similar system. They're based on the very sensible observation that immigration should be about building up your country. It's not about your country being a sponge for anyone who wants to come or a pressure valve for countries that want to let off steam. I think that's why the Mexican government is so attached to having an open border to the U.S., because if they didn't, if Mexicans who were dissatisfied with that corrupt oligarchical system, if they didn't constantly move to the United States, they would overthrow that government, which has been hopeless for 50 years. So I think there are countless benefits to stabilizing and rationalizing our immigration law, and then, drumroll, actually enforcing it.
That would be different, wouldn't it? Yeah, wow. One of the points that you make, and I want you to elaborate on a little bit, and because we're talking about, when we talk about South America, Latin America, they went through their revolutions and campaigns for independence in the early 1800s, half a century later than what went on in the United States. But in your book, you look at fundamental differences in how governments were created there and why many of them were not successful, and that contributes to people wanting to get out.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to realize that the differences between North and South America, it's not fundamentally racial or religious. It's cultural and historical, and it goes back to the governmental systems of the countries that colonized. The English have always had a relatively decentralized form of government. They've always had common law, which respects precedent and tradition, and again, decentralized, and very strong defense of private property and protection from arbitrary seizure. And think of the American founders, how they basically overthrew the government over a small tax because they thought the tax was unjustified because they weren't represented in Parliament. The American colonies were self-governing, many of them with things like town meetings, legislatures. They had a very strong ordered form of liberty with widespread representation, widespread ownership of property. You didn't have one or two landholders.
John, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry. We have to hold that thought. We'll let you come back and finish up there, but we do have to take another break along our network line. We need to remind folks that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is John Zmirak. He is the co-author of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, an America First Manifesto, available at all the fine bookstores around Florida, and we'll continue the conversation in a moment.
Why am I wearing a lab coat and standing in your lawn? Because I'm a Bayer Advanced Lawn Care Scientist, and I'm about to revolutionize the way you control lawn weeds. Because with Bayer Advanced Season-Long Weed Control for Lawns, you get the only spray that kills listed broadleaf lawn weeds, then creates a barrier below to prevent new weeds for up to 6 months. One application is all it takes. Count on Bayer Advanced to put revolutionary science right in your hands. Get more from the blue bottle. Always read and follow label instructions.
If only Jason would have stopped before turning. But he didn't. Actually, he didn't even slow down or look. If he had, he would have seen the woman in the crosswalk. 1 in every 4 traffic fatalities involves a pedestrian, so please stop before turning right on red and always yield for pedestrians. Safety doesn't happen by accident. Alert today, alive tomorrow. A message from the Florida Department of Transportation.
The concept of forgiveness is very simple. Forgiveness is letting go of your anger, bitterness, sense of justice, and desire for revenge. It's giving the issue to God and letting Him deal with it. Just let it go. Unfortunately, once emotions get involved, everything becomes more difficult. You see, our instinct is to trust ourselves rather than God. We get afraid that if we give control to God, He might not do what we want done. We want to be sure the bad guys get their due. Knowing that we would struggle with forgiveness, the Lord's Prayer makes it clear. If you want the forgiveness of God, you must be willing to forgive others. And here's the key. Sometimes I can't forgive others in my own strength. I have to confess to God and ask Him to help me forgive others through His power. He always does. We all need forgiveness,
Make the choice to forgive others, just like Christ forgives you.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org and click Devotions to read the daily devotion and send to a friend.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And our special guest this day is John Zmirak. He is the co-author of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, an America First manifesto from our friends at Regnery Publishing, available at all the fine bookstores around Florida and places like Amazon.com. And John, you were in the midst of a thought there when we had to go to that break.
Sure.
I want you to come back, and we were talking about the differences between North and South American governments and history and whatnot. And go ahead and finish up that thought.
Sure. So in South America, you had people from Spain that had been rigidly centralized. It had eliminated all the local rights of the towns and cities in Spain. It was increasingly a centralized dictatorship. And when the Bourbon monarchy took over Spain, they centralized it even more. So everything that happened in Central and South America was about Spain. If a South American industry was doing well and it competed with the Spanish winemakers, they would close it down. Everybody who ran things were all appointed directly from Spain. They served their time and they went back to Spain. The land was centralized in the hands of a few lords with a lot of Indians forced to work for them. There was not much sense of private property. The government could seize it. It was just a kind of centralized, rigid, dictatorial thing we see in Venezuela today. It's sad, but they never put down the roots of large numbers of people being small business owners or small farmers. They didn't have the sense of rule of law and clear property rights. They didn't have town meetings. Everything was decided from Spain. When they had a revolution, all they did was cut off the Spanish part, but you continued to see centralized, dictatorial, junta-based governments fighting for power, a large role for the government in everyone's life, a small role for civil society. Just a very, very different culture that you see, and the result is that even though we all had founders with similar principles, Simon Bolivar sounds just as good as Thomas Jefferson. The cultural background in which they operated was not one where ordered liberal democracy could easily take root, and that's why you see such radically different outcomes between North and most of South America. The irony is, if you look at Argentina as of 1900, they had an equal gross GDP to America. But then they adopted populist, socialist economic policies, and they drove themselves into the gutter. They bankrupted the place. But they started off just as well as we where we were, as of 1900. It shows you how politics and economics can make all the difference in the world.
So is there any chance of reform for any of these South American countries or countries like Mexico? I mean, or do we just help their corruption by letting in all their immigrants?
Well, I think we've seen some hope, and we've seen some improvement in places like Peru and Chile to some degree. Mexico is a very tough case because large parts of it have been hijacked by drug cartels. And I think until we build a wall and do more to secure our border, our southern border will be de facto the sovereign territory of these drug cartels who control it and who smuggle people in at will, often in human trafficking, often young women brought in for sex slavery. I saw in the Huffington Post, 80% of women who entered the U.S. illegally via Mexico are raped on the way, 80%. Until and unless we gain control of the southern border, we're essentially complicit in all that abuse of human rights.
John, you have in the book, this Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, a 15-point building blocks of what you call Mission America. And while we don't have time to get into all of them, I want to ask you what You and
the
your
most
co-author.
important ones.
What do you want them to take away from this book? Yeah.
Sure. Okay. First, we need to build a wall in order to gain primary control of our southern border from the drug cartels. Secondly, we need to mandate that every employer in America find out if their worker is here legally. There's a system for it called E-Verify. What you won't believe is that it's completely voluntary. In fact, the state of California discourages it. That's how crazy it is, that the state of California doesn't want people to check on whether a worker is here legally in America. That's how nutty it is. So you need a wall, you need workplace verification via E-Verify. Then you need one more thing to track the visas. People who come here on temporary visas and never go home. For instance, many of the World Trade Center guys who hijacked the planes and flew them into those buildings in my hometown, I was there, they'd come here on tourist visas and they just never went home and nobody checked. We need to check, and we need to remove people who overstay their visas. And we need to get rid of chain migration. In other words, we need to fix our legal immigration system so it's based on something like what Canada and Australia do, based on our economic needs, rather than who happens to have a cousin that managed to get across the Rio Grande and get amnesty 20 years ago. Those are the primary steps. We need to also get rid of birthright citizenship and restrict just how much public welfare people can get if they've come to America voluntarily and it hasn't worked out. People who sponsor legal immigrants, I don't know if you knew this, technically are supposed to support them if they become indigent so that they don't go on welfare. They sign a pledge to that degree. That's never enforced. We could start enforcing that. It's already on the books. There are a lot of things we can do to simply restore the sane parts of our immigration system that were either thrown away in 1965 or simply left unenforced as if they were obsolete laws about who can ride a buggy into the town square on the Sabbath.
John, aside from reading the book, is there a website where our listeners can go to find more information?
Sure. I write about this, and so does my co-author, several times a week at Stream, S-T-R-E-A-M, stream.org. And there are good organizations like the Center for Immigration Studies, Numbers USA, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, ACT for America. There are a lot of good groups that are trying to do sensible things about this issue.
John Zmirak, we do thank you for all your time this day. Once again, the book is The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration, an America First Manifesto. It is from our friends at Regnery Publishing. It is available at all the fine bookstores around Florida and places like Amazon.com. We hope that you'll give it a good read and some due consideration. And again, John, thank you so much for your time, and we'd like you to come back and do this again with us a few months off.
Thank you. I'd be delighted. Have a great day.
Thank you. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
A closing thought in a moment.
Right now, Wet & Forget Outdoor is cleaning that black and green stuff off all my outdoor surfaces. With Wet & Forget Outdoor, you just spray it on, and every time it rains, it cleans. Moss, mold, mildew, and algae don't stand a chance on my siding, deck, and pavers. Even the fabric on my patio umbrella. Outdoor cleaning is as easy as Wet & Forget. Make cleaning easier. Pick up Wet & Forget Outdoor today at Walmart or visit wetandforget.com to find a store near you.
Guilt. To most, it's just a word. But if you hit or worse kill a pedestrian while driving, guilt becomes your shadow, following you every day for the rest of your life. And let's be honest, you have a lot of life left to live. So please, stop before turning right on red and always yield for pedestrians. Because safety doesn't happen by accident. Alert today, alive tomorrow. A message from the Florida Department of Transportation.
The concept of forgiveness is very simple. Forgiveness is letting go of your anger, bitterness, sense of justice, and desire for revenge. It's giving the issue to God and letting Him deal with it. Just let it go. Unfortunately, once emotions get involved, everything becomes more difficult. You see, our instinct is to trust ourselves rather than God. We get afraid that if we give control to God, He might not do what we want done. We want to be sure the bad guys get their due. Knowing that we would struggle with forgiveness, the Lord's Prayer makes it clear. If you want the forgiveness of God, you must be willing to forgive others. And here's the key. Sometimes I can't forgive others in my own strength. I have to confess to God and ask Him to help me forgive others through His power. He always does. We all need forgiveness. Make the choice to forgive others, just like Christ forgives you.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org and click Devotions to read the daily devotion and send to a friend.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Employ Florida offers resources and services to help you find employment.
Hi, Gary here. Employ Florida helped me improve my interview skills, plus write a great resume. I attended networking events with many employers and other industry professionals just like me. With the workshops and training found at employflorida.com, I was able to land a great job in my field.
Job resources, real results, hired. EmployFlorida.com. That's EmployFlorida.com.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And Michael, interesting commentary there and a different point of view, an explanatory point of view, I think. The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration by John Zmirak. Some of those points make a great deal of sense. Some I'm sure, those along the network line would argue with, but that's what it's all about. But
well, check out the book because there's definitely a lot more details in the book. So I would encourage people to do that.
Yeah, absolutely right. One of the points that I didn't even get a chance to get around to talking about with him, and it is a kind of a brand new story. We have reports coming out of China. That they have at least, starting this, 10,000 ensconced in camps to, as the Associated Press headline says, to brainwash the masses. The Chinese government trying to reprogram Muslims.
Oh, I heard about this, yeah. One of their Muslim populations, yeah.
There is a topic for another entire program.
Exactly.
Huh? Wow. I don't think that's going to happen here. At least we certainly hope not. So.
Yeah.
But in any event, Mike, you've got a couple of other venues. You got a couple of seconds here.
Yeah. Just follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R, or find my show Beyond Reason Radio on iHeartRadio.
And we do want to say thank you for your time this day, Mike. And I know that you have lots of choices out there, and we're always delighted when you spend a few minutes here with us. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
We'll see you again next week with the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to the Florida Roundtable, a news and public affairs presentation of the Florida News Network. The views and opinions expressed during this show are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's management, ownership, or sponsors. Please email your comments to reagansmith@fnnonline.net.